Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. And once again, I apologize for the slow lag on my end with Wi-Fi going slow, but I'm going to try to get it fixed. But hopefully you can see me and hear me. And we welcome you to Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. And I greet you live from the All-America city of Morrisville, North Carolina, the 8th largest state in the United States of America. I want to welcome you, wherever you are in the country and world, to this show. And as the host of the show, I'm honored to lead a great discussion on global affairs, on innovation, on an increasingly turbulent world, politically, economically, on the heels of a potential bank crisis in the United States and a looming recession, as the Fed is once again expected to raise interest rates a quarter point. Many people are concerned this will begin, if we're not already in a recession, with rising gas prices, inflation, prices all across the board going up, and major layoffs occurring in North Carolina, with Credit Suisse being the most recent bank that's going to put out people from work because of the Silicon Valley Bank crisis. Today, we're going to be talking about Donald Trump's indictment. This is a significant development in the Republican nomination, of course. This will be the first former president, if he is indicted, for hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, the adult star, a pornography star, that would really hurt the president's chances possibly in winning the Republican nomination, or would it affect them? It does show that polling shows that 54% of Republicans still support Donald Trump, and there is fear of protests to take place. The second big news is that some drones went off in Ukraine into an apartment building, killing one person. We're going to talk about that. At a World's Water Conference, it's been indicated or revealed that 26% of the world's water is not safe to drink, which is very, very concerning to many of us around the world. And we have problems with abundant, clean drinking water, even in the United States. Flooding is continued in California, and we're going to get right into the banking crisis and some of these major things. And then I'll share my final insights at the end of the show. So we want to welcome Mark Lee and the other guests, and we're going to dive right into talking about Donald Trump's investigation today. I've been not keeping up with it as much as I should be, but we'll be talking about that today.
We're going to get into some news, and we've actually got somebody from New York, that being Lee Newton Road, so he might have some insights into what's going on in all of that space. And of course, we also have Dan Worthington as well. When I was watching the news, it looked like there were folks that were gathering in New York for the possible arrival of Donald Trump, the former president, and all along those lines, and the possible arrest. But then, like I said, he was still in Florida, and it didn't look like there was any movement in that part. But that's when I watched the news yesterday evening, and there didn't seem to be any direction as to whether that was going to happen or not happen, and all in that space. But what are you hearing from New York, since you are not only a presidential candidate, but like our New York representative?
They're making it into a joke. I don't know what this guy's thinking. He basically turned a parking ticket into a felony. Where's the logic over here? Plus, it's something that the prosecutors years ago passed on, and how it's like 6-7 years old.
Yep.
The only thing it's going to do is make people more against the establishment, against the corruption in the DOJ, and want to support this guy. And then Alan Dershowitz came out and said, "Big deal. Even if he's indicted, even if he's convicted, even if he's in jail, he can still run and serve."
Yeah. We've definitely heard that. Like I said, I mentioned a couple of times, there is a candidate, the Tiger King, that is already saying he is running from the jail cell and all in that space. So I'm sure there have been other candidates that have run from jail cells as well. Now, whether they actually have had anybody that had the kind of backing that Trump has and the kind of support that Trump has that could conceivably win from the jail cell, who knows? But as I know from history,
Mark, we have prosecutors and we have the DOJ are going with microscopes looking at Trump. But when it comes to the Bidens, they're Mr. Magoo and their eyes are closed, and claim Mr. Schultz on the Hogan's Heroes. They know nothing. Yeah. They don't want to know anything.
I don't know enough about. I haven't had a chance to read enough about the prosecutor in charge of it, but as a political analyst,
Steve, all you need to know is during all these riots, he downgraded all these arrests. The misdemeanors are just released to everybody. Just discharge them.
Now, as a political analyst, and I'm going to go to Dan Worthington on this. I initially, when I saw this, I thought, well, this is actually good news for the Republicans and for DeSantis supporters. But my mom actually, over dinner conversation yesterday, was saying the same thing Lee said. I mean, this could actually have the opposite effect. It actually could actually enthuse Trump supporters even more and help him win the nomination, which, in my opinion, and I know, Dan, you're a Republican, is bad for the Republican Party. Because the polling does show, whether you like it or not, the polling does show that Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump again. But I don't know whether he can beat DeSantis.
Well, here's the situation. What that lawsuit proves unequivocally is that the Democrats are using any means possible to try to disqualify Donald Trump. And like Lee said, this case was passed on by the DOJ and the feds 6 years ago as a no-burger, primarily because of the testimony of the guy that showed up on Monday to explain what kind of dweeb Donald's former enforcer was, and a liar. And this is absolutely a no-burger. It shouldn't go anywhere. It is, no pun intended, trumped up. Not that Donald Trump is an angel, we know that, but President Biden and his family is far, far worse. Donald Trump is, if he's guilty of anything, it all is related to private business matters and private conduct. Biden, all of his crimes are actually public crimes.
Dan?
Taking bribes while serving, other kinds of money, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Dan and Lee. I was watching a commentator yesterday. I can't remember which of the other networks was on in that space, but they were actually saying that the New York case is the weakest of the cases. So they are actually saying that some of the cases that are actually still out there with Trump are stronger. I think that some of it is revolving around what happened with that raid on his house in Florida, and there's a couple of other cases in other parts.
Mark, you're making another point. You're making a point. Is this a state issue or a federal issue? If it's a federal issue, then what's this guy doing? He's a state prosecutor.
No, that's what the Republicans are saying. It is.
Well,
there's no standing.
As a Democrat, I would say that I just think this is, I mean, first of all, let's take a pivot here for a second. We don't have any economists on the show, but it does also look like the economy is headed into a tailspin. So this morning,
no, Steve, that's okay. They'll just redefine the tailspin. It's okay. We're doing real good.
But the point I'm trying to make is that the Democrats should be, they don't really have much to stand on right now economically. But the fact of the matter is they're getting away from the issues, and maybe Dan Worthington is right. Maybe they're pulling for straws because they know that, locally, an economist today, Dr. Michael Walden from NC State, announced we're probably already in a recession, but that formally into a recession. People concerned about the banking crisis, why the Fed is going to increase interest rates another 0.5 point. I think that's just going to hurt the economy even more. And we don't see inflation really. I mean, they say inflation could be about 4% by the end of the year. 4.4% actually, which is still significantly more than it was obviously before COVID. So
200%.
I don't know whether this is the best strategy the Democrats would have, to be honest with you.
No, it's stupid. It's stupid. And these are Soros basically funded prosecutors. I mean, it's okay. So actually the Democrats should want Donald Trump to run. They should, if they think that Joe Biden can beat him, they should want him to run, right? Because Joe Biden's not going to beat DeSantis.
That's why I don't understand, because I think I do think that if DeSantis is the nominee at this point, I do believe that it's going to be a much tougher race because he does represent, a fresher face, a new person that can, and it could be the election very much could be about the economy.
Remember the Pope.
Well, I think this election in 2024 will really be on the economy, and I think that the Democrats' chance of I think their ability to hold on to the White House and even the Congress and Senate is going to be, if the economy gets better by luck and inflation vanishes, unemployment is down. We still have a labor crisis, but still, right now, it's not looking good.
No, it's not looking good.
We'll see what happens in that space. Hey, Leo, just wondering, I did hear that there was efforts to prepare for protests there in New York City, and there are definitely Trump supporters that are coming to New York. So are we going to see another DC-like type of movement by those that are adamant supporters of Trump there in New York City? And I was wondering what you're hearing since you're on the ground there.
Shows up.
That's a good point. Mark, I'm not sure that January 6th was Trump supporters. There were people there. There were people who were violent, but I'm not sure how many were FBI, how many were plants, and how many were actual Trump supporters.
Yeah,
so Trump supporters are just.
I mean, that can be said about many movements.
Several busloads of Antifa came. We don't, and they wore Trump hats, MAGA hats, and so they're probably the ones that stirred it up, along with the FBI. They got their memos anyway, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the memos between the FBI amongst themselves with all the manipulation and crap they were doing with respect to the Proud Boys and others, they were clearly involved in this thing. It's stupid.
They've been involved in stuff on both the left and the right for years. I mean, they love.
Well, yeah. So we're going to bring up the PLO argument again.
Infiltrate the groups and then try to manipulate the groups. I mean, we definitely saw that with Black Panthers. We definitely still see that with some of the radical groups.
That Black Panthers were a bunch of criminals anyway. We know that.
You say that, but the Black Panthers actually have a rich history of some of the positive things that they did in society. But we can go into a whole nother argument.
I'm just jacking you, buddy. I'm just jacking you.
So let's go to the. Sasha's not here yet, but Mark, if you could pull the name of the. It starts with an L. I'm having lagging on my Wi-Fi, so I don't want to pull it.
No, see if I can't find that story.
And there was a drone strike in Ukraine that killed. It hit an apartment building. Killed one person. So obviously the Russians are turning to drones. And this is, a setback for Ukraine. Looks like they've had a number of attacks over the last couple of days. Kind of a seesaw back and forth. But, just want to, we'll wait for Sasha to come on and talk about that. And there's also, Mark, a UN conference on water. They reported that 26% of the world doesn't have safe drinking water, which I found to be, Sasha Starr is here. Sasha, please.
Add him in.
I'll try to add him in so that we can have a conversation with him as well. So let's see if I can get
let's bring him in.
Going. Yeah, hold on one second while I try to get that going there, Sasha. Let's see if we can get him in.
All right, Sasha.
Hello.
Sasha,
good morning, Sasha.
Welcome. Good morning.
Well, Sasha, that's happened to me before. Thank you for being with us. Let's go right to you. There was a drone strike at an apartment building. And I can't remember the name. The city starts with an L. What's going on in Ukraine this morning?
What's going on in Ukraine is that we're just through analyzing the visit of Emperor Xi to Moscow. And this is a very important event.
Emperor.
And or you want to call him chairman, maybe better. I don't know. I think he's an emperor. If he's not an emperor, then who is he? What's his definition? I think he's an emperor. And I think that this visit was very, very bad thing for the West, United States as well, because the very undefined foreign policy of present government in the United States led to when you're withdrawing from the world stage and you're getting back, and even while you're helping Ukraine, but it's also kind of undefined. You were saying that we want to make sure that Ukraine is not defeated. Now, if it's not defeated, could it win the war? Nowhere the West, United States, clearly say Ukraine is going to win this war, and we're going to supply everything what we have in order to allow that to happen. They're not saying that. They're sometimes supplying more, sometimes less. Whereas China fills all the vacuums that the United States left in the world stage. Whereas look at this deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Where is the United States there? Nowhere, like they don't exist. And this is an important part of the world because Saudi Arabia and Iran, by the way, too, they control a lot of oil. So the strategic interests of U.S. should be in that region one way or another, and it's not. Now, China is going to visit Putin. Never mind that Putin is now declared world criminal or so on, the war criminal. So, but again, she went there, met Putin, offered his 12 points peace plan for whatever it's worth. I like the point number one of this plan, without criticizing all the others, is that Russia have to retreat its troops on the border of 1991. I like at least the beginning. I wouldn't analyze other 11 points. Maybe they are important too. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. But at least this is some kind of initiative that endears China to a lot of countries in Africa, Latin America, Asia, and so on. So China is, okay, here is a war. It's a tragedy. People are being killed. So China is now tables the plan how to avoid and stop the war, and then talk about the possible peace negotiations and so on. But I have a feel that eventually the new kind of a deal similar to what's happened in Yalta in 1945 will be sooner or later done between United States and China. So it's not going to be Russia or Soviet Union this time, it's going to be China. And there will be probably some kind of a deal between who is doing what, who is responsible for what, and so on. And Russia will be a junior partner of China, simply because.
Yeah, and that goes back to the, and before, and Sasha, that's a good point. And I think there's a lot of concerns about how now, typically up until now, the U.S. foreign policy has been one where we actually have worked on having relationships with our adversaries in a way that relationship has been more positive than those adversaries between them. Like, for example, between Russia and China, or China and North Korea. But now what's happened is we've been isolated, and our adversaries are now all colluding. So, you start looking at kind of a new world order: Russia, China, North Korea, Saudi Arabia, Iran, kind of like the new Axis powers against what? United States. Obviously, we have Canada. United Kingdom is much weaker than it was, Britain, and so this is the new world, and I just don't see.
Hey, Steve, isn't part of the problem that within that new world order there are disruptions within our own allies and everything? Because while we are going on with what's happening, and I know that there are some commentators that have not been on lately that are not the biggest fans, and I'm not saying I'm the biggest fan because I've never been to the country, but they're not the biggest fans of France. But France is dealing with its own government issues because apparently they had a bunch of pension reform, and now their folks in France are protesting that and are very upset on that.
Oh yeah, I was about to
there
talk
are people that are definitely going out on the streets because they want to have some more control of their own economic rights and everything as they grow older, because definitely he was pushing through his pension plan and folks aren't too pleased with Mr.
He increased the retirement age, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by 2 years. So
can I ask you all a question? Why does the government, because historically this has not been the case, where people relied on the government for their retirement income? Why is it the government's responsibility?
It happened in the United States with Social Security and
No, I understand that. So prior to Social Security, people didn't come to the government, and the government didn't dish out, or whatever you want to call it, all these entitlements, and they didn't have to have these liabilities or unfunded liabilities, all these programs. What did people do for hundreds of years?
I mean, Lee, isn't part of it that at a time similar to this time and everything, when we were in the middle of a Great Depression, there were a number of people that were very poor and impoverished around the world. So that is when a certain president came up with those New Deal programs, and some of those programs have definitely, through the course of time, had their detriments and had some things that are.
Mark, was this voted on by Congress? This what
other aspects that were good.
This is not part of our founding. Was it ever voted on by Congress?
No, like I said, it was the New Deal was passed by the president. I'm sure it was also, and I have to study the history, but I'm sure it was also, approved by the Congress in addition to the president coming up with it. I don't think that he just unilaterally did it, but if any of y'all are more knowledgeable, maybe Dan is, of what was going on during that time and everything, then correct me, but I'm pretty sure that it was done through the legislative process.
Dan, will we not be better off without it?
Without Social Security?
Yeah, it had not been instituted to begin with.
Some people.
Yeah, but not all people. And
why not?
Well, because
why not?
Because I think a lot of seniors are dependent on it, Lee.
But these are seniors who put into the system. So they instead of giving the government the money to begin with, they would have kept it and invested it how they wanted. Why would they not have been better off?
It's a part of the problem what a lot of folks on this network talk about, which is fiscal literacy and financial knowledge and all in that. So unless you were going to educate and get folks to actually pay attention to their savings and their money, then there will be a lot of folks that would be in a.
No, I understand that, but it seems like we're going to the government more as a babysitter, more and more as the government just gets bigger and bigger to get more and more responsibilities to take over our lives. How do we save money? How do we eat? How do we drive? How do we work? Guaranteed income, all these other programs. It's like, no, people don't want the liberties anymore, the freedom for their own lives anymore. Am I wrong?
You're right.
You sound like my father. My father's, even though my father's a Republican. You go ahead. My father's a Republican, and he often says the same thing, that if people were not protesting so much, they'd actually have a job. And he always wonders why the government's providing all these.
Steve, I want to get to Sasha, but I do have to tease.
Steve, you should get your father on the show.
I want to get to Sasha real quickly, but I do have to tease you, Steve, really quickly before I get to Sasha, because you, Lee, are sounding very much like some of my more liberal friends, and some people may even call them a leftist, because they oftentimes talk about decentralization. And that is something that you hear some of the crypto and other people talking about. So it sounds like you're also backing what they're saying that they would like to see in a lot of things, whether that's money or whether that's media or a number of other things, because that is one of their very.
I would never put Lee in the left camp. No, that Lee is not left.
No. But the less government in your lives, I think the better people are. Am I wrong?
Yeah. See, so Mark is referring to anarchists, not progressives.
Yeah, I want to hear what Sasha has to say, please. Okay, Sasha?
Lee, I wanted to mention that I think you're not right. I'll tell you
why.
Let's see. You take two people working in similar jobs, making, say, $75,000 a year, $100,000 a year. Doesn't matter. And one is very shrewd in his investments, and he's using top investment talent to help him run his retirement money or so on. And the other one is he would like to have some retirement funds or so on, but he's rather reckless. He's not investing that well. He's spending money or so on. So at the end of the day, when they both retire, one have a nag of, say, $5 million, give or take, and another one have maybe $100,000. It's all what he would.
Or nothing.
Or nothing, or even better, nothing. Okay. But because he spent so many years working in the same company and so on, he should be entitled to at least a minimum pension so he could have a meaningful existence and not to be so severely punished for his foolishness as a result of his financial illiteracy, as a result of his well, some other deficiencies that he might have. Maybe he is drinking too much and so on.
Making Lee's point.
Yeah. so
Sasha?
Yeah.
So what you want to do is guarantee they'll have more money so the government takes it for safekeeping, right?
Okay, more money. Okay, you can call it that. I'm talking about some kind of a minimum.
Right. Okay. For whatever it is. So why not? Why 10%? Why not 50% Social Security tax? So you'll have more of a retirement. Why not 60%? Tell the government to take.
No. I'm not talking.
Let's even the playing field for retirement.
No, I'm not talking about extravagance money, so people will.
That's all subjective.
Themselves. No, I would say some kind of a minimum. It could be, I don't know what it could be in the United States, $30,000, maybe 25. I'm not so sure. So people would be. It's in a way it's not fair because again you're sort of like you can go have fun, spend all the money. You will still be being paid $25,000 or $30,000 because of your foolishness. So you're guaranteed that. So go ahead, spend everything and have a good time. I feel weaknesses.
Sasha, how would you feel if it was voluntary?
Well, I'm saying, but Sasha and Lee, I got a question because it comes down to both housing and retirement. I do know for a fact don't have any plans, and my parents don't have any plans because they definitely like living in the house that they live in. But if you go into the retirement homes, and there are retirement homes here in North Carolina, there are some that are more affluent and cost a little bit more than others do. And the same can be said around housing. And there are sometimes folks will say that there is not enough fairness in the way those retirement homes are set up. So, for example, if you go to the one that's got Duke in the name, Forest of the Duke, you're going to get all kinds of wonderful amenities because you can afford Forest of the Duke. Now, some of these other retirement homes are almost like public housing and all in that space. So, do we need to have some more fairness in the way our retired citizens are paid? Or are we just going to go based on the economy and the way that folks were fortunate enough to live their lives and everything? So, should there be some sort of balance in the way we treat our retirement, or are we going to say that the rich get better retirement and the poor get whatever they get?
Typically how it works, Mark.
Yeah, I know that's the way it works, but I'm just saying, is that fair?
Yeah, it certainly is fair.
Okay. Or in other words, life is not fair, Mark.
Well,
yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right?
I think economies thrive when you have a growing middle class. And I think that's the key is we have to make sure that the job opportunities are there. And of course, that people do want to work and that we don't have a culture where people just want to sit at home or not get back in the labor force. But if you look at India, for example, the reason they've gone from one of the worst economies in the world to the fifth largest economy is that there's over 400 million now in the middle class. So when my parents came from India in the 1960s, there was a middle class in India. Now you can basically, many Indians are working. They are getting a car. They're able to find a place to live. There's a lot of new jobs being created. There's investments being made in infrastructure. There's always going to be high levels of poverty, much higher than we would ever see in our lifetime in the United States. Also, very low literacy rates as well. But as the middle class rises, it lifts up the economy.
I get what you're saying, Steve. I get what you're saying, Steve. But if there's a shrinking middle class, and there are some folks who would say there's a shrinking middle class in the United States, and we're using the retirement home as an example, you got a choice. You're either rich and can afford the more affluent type of retirement home, or you're going to go to a dump because you can't afford the better retirement home unless we're going to do things that balance it out and give people at least some better quality retirement.
And why should we do that? Why does that make sense? People who pay for the money to go to the better retirement homes is because they have the money to pay for the better retirement homes. The ones that end up going to the other places is because all they have is Social Security or whatever, and that's what they take. And it is what it is. The other people worked hard during their life and put it away, saved it. They were prudent. It's sort of like the wise man builds his house upon a rock. The foolish man builds his house upon the sand.
But I'm saying, right? is that fair, particularly when there are situations in the world?
When the rain comes down, the man who has his house built on the rock stands.
No, I hear what you're saying, Dan.
The foolish man who built his house on the sand is washed away.
No, but that's where I was going to come back to something that Lee talks about often.
You know?
That's why we come back to something that Lee talks about often. If let's say that a person has a home and they have a home in a nice middle class neighborhood, and there is growth and development, whether that is corporate growth or whether that is growth from some of our institutions, colleges, and things like that, and they then get bought out for whatever amount they get bought out for, and sometimes it is abnormally low versus what they probably deserve for their houses and all in that space. Then if they are bought out, then they might wind up having to go to a poor environment versus the richer environment. We've definitely seen that in Durham. We've seen that in Raleigh. We've seen that in a number of other places where there have been places that have been annexed by some of the bigger corporations that are coming out and buying out folks and buying them out at a cheap rate is part of the conversation around gentrification. I'm not saying that that's all of the conversation, but that is part of the conversation. So my question is the government obligated to at least try to provide some sort of housing to those folks that lived their lives quite well, made a successful living, and then were forced out of their house for whatever reasons and everything through that process of eminent domain and all of those lines, and then they don't have the resources to get to the high-end retirement homes, because there are retirement homes that are city-run.
And the Bill of Rights, is housing in there? I don't see it listed.
Well, some people would say pursuit of happiness, and that whole line in there entitles you to housing and a number of other things. I mean, we could also get back to something else.
No, it doesn't.
Mark, a quick question. Pursuit of happiness, does it include, for example, Bentley car? Because if you're not driving Bentley,
that would make me happy. Wouldn't it make you happy, Mark?
Well, like I said, don't do nothing for me, but
that would make me happy.
All of that. Yeah. So it's a
non-starter for me. And all in that should have
but there is something that is supposed to be part of the pursuit of happiness, and it's something that Steve alluded to earlier and everything. And this is a big concern that a lot of folks are having because of overconsumption. And I didn't know that we could overconsume this because it's the primary aspect of the earth and all in that space. But apparently, as Steve alluded to, because of overconsumption, and some people would argue climate change, it's not just to 26% lack clean drinking water. They're saying that like 48% or 46% are having issues with sanitation and all of that. So that would seem to me that would be part of the pursuit of happiness, is the right to have adequate food and adequate water. But if we got like 1/4 of the world that doesn't have adequate water, isn't that a problem?
Mark, when the Bill of Rights, none of them cost anything. They're all things that are free. You're free to worship. You're free to do whatever you want. Go do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They don't cost anything, because once they start costing, that means you're enslaving somebody else to provide a service for you. If housing is a right, then you're enslaving someone to build a house for you. If medical services are right, healthcare is a right, then you're making people go to school, you're making people be doctors, and you're forcing them to treat you.
No, but you're saying a couple of things you're saying. One, you're saying that religion doesn't have a cost, and there is that whole process of...
Not by government, it doesn't. I'm not forcing anyone to build me a church or a synagogue or a mosque. If I want to worship, me and my friends have to get together and get ourselves a religious leader if we want or not, and get ourselves a place to worship. It's not the government's job to provide it.
But how many churches also, well, two things. One, how many churches and religious leaders of all denominations and all styles of religion that wind up influencing our politicians and everything? We definitely saw that with everybody from Louis Farrakhan to Billy Graham and all in that space. So how much influence do our religious leaders have? And also, do they not also rely on the government for some aid for those buildings that they have, whether it's the churches or whether it's a number of other things? So I can't say that the church and there's supposed to be separation of church and state, but I'm not convinced that it is total separation as much as we would like to think it is.
What does separation of church and state mean, Lee?
I'm not sure. All I know, I don't think it exists. I think that's just a made-up term. The only thing I learned is the government. There should not be government-sponsored or sanctioned religion. But the separation of church, I think, is a misnomer. I don't know where that came from. We Congress opens the session with a blessing.
No, but there are some folks that, what is the common phrase we hear about the United States? It is a Christian Puritan nation. That is telling that in. It's something that we hear our politicians say all the time on all sides of politics. So it doesn't have automatically put religion and And then we also do the whole prayer thing when they're doing Congress and when they're getting sworn in. So that sounds like you've already tied in religion to the politics.
What's your point?
That you were saying that there should, I think Lee was saying that there was should be separation of church and state. My point
is
he
didn't say that.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that, Mark. I don't think that idea exists. I think it's something made up. I think it's not people say, why do we leave Britain or in England? We don't want a state-sanctioned religion. We don't want to say you have to be Christian, you have to be Jewish, you have to be Muslim. We don't have that type of system over here. You can be whatever you want. It's not the government's business. That's what I'm saying.
You want to be.
Do what you want to do.
If you want to be a Druid, you can be a Druid. If you want to be some other kind of interesting religion, you can definitely do that along those lines. So definitely I would agree with that. But I do sometimes wonder how much influence our religious leaders have. And like I said, I can use everybody from Reverend Barber on the left to
it's
Billy Graham on the right.
Moral authority. Not Reverend Barber. He doesn't have any morals. But it's only moral authority that they're able to claim, right? Well, and in a lot of black churches, you guys also do a lot of politics, which you're not supposed to do. They're supposed to not be, because you lose your tax exempt status if you're politically active and doing other things like that.
And there are right-wing churches that are politically active as well. First off, I'm going to take that as a personal affront, what you just said about Reverend Barber, because he is a family friend and all in that space. So definitely I'll just
he's
have
a
conversation afterwards.
He's a punk. I don't like him. So it's okay.
You don't have to like him, but I can go ahead and like him, and we can have a conversation as to what good
he should have never been elected to Senate. He still continues to draw his salary from the church. He shouldn't be allowed to do both.
Well, first off, he's never been in a political office as of yet. And I don't know whether he runs for political office, but he has run a poor people's campaign that is very much similar to what Martin Luther King was doing, and all in that space. So, like I said, there are folks that are in my friend circle as well that are not the biggest fans of his because they have some of their internal politics that are disagreeable, and I can agree to be friends with both of them, even though they are and one of them has been on our network, but even though they have got different views and don't see eye to eye on the way that certain things were done internally, and whether there was some corruption or non-corruption on either one of their parts, that's a matter for folks to decide as time goes on.
Okay, well, let's get back to the central discussion. Mm-hmm. Religion will always have, quote unquote, influence in American politics, because it's a part of our lives. It should be a part of our lives. We are a God-fearing country. We have basically Judeo-Christian beliefs. Even Muslims, believe Christ was a prophet, right? Mm-hmm. They believe his teachings. So it's not like there are atheists who want to ignore the fact there is a God. And, that's their privilege if they want to do that. I mean, they can do it. It's sort of like ignoring the fact there's a sunshine and a sky and that kind of thing. But, hey, go let them knock themselves out. And then you got other wackadoodles. Now, some of the crazies are engaged in illegal activities, which they shouldn't be doing under the auspices of religious freedom. But America is dependent upon the idea that there is a supreme being. I mean, its rights and privileges are based on that. Our inalienable rights come from God. They don't come from a mushroom or a whatever.
And they don't come from government either. Government's job is just to not get in the way of them and just to guarantee them their God-given rights.
That's exactly right. And freedom of religion is one of those because it's inalienable. It's God-given. And so when you say if religion has an influence in American politics, well, it certainly does, Mark, and it's supposed to. It should, right? Because that's part of what our country was founded on and continues to be what our country is founded on.
But how much influence should it have on world
freedom
politics?
Freedom of religion means every religion, right, Dan? Freedom of religion means every religion.
Yeah, it really means every religion. You have a right of conscience. You have a right of belief, right? I mean, you do. And no one should deny that. Yeah, so what's your point, Mark?
No, I'm saying, but how much of that do we then also need to spread to other countries? Because that is some of the other conversation that folks have is that, yes, that we believe that we are strictly Judeo-Christian countries, that we then need to go out and try to convert, let's just talk
Mark, we're not missionaries.
Free to choose their own political systems. It's not our business. Certainly, we would like people to be free. That's one of the things that one of the American values. We like this to see freedom around the world, democracies rather than despots and that kind of thing, kind of like we have right now in our country with Joe Biden's kind of a despot. But anyway, and some of the idiot Democrats we have. But anyway, that's beside the point.
But Dan, what do you say to those folks that would argue that there are countries that we have because we feel that they are allies and because we like their view of politics, that we have actually started those countries and prop them up because they are more along the lines of our beliefs? There are some people, and I'm not saying that I am one, but I do know people that would make that argument, that would say that about the creation of Israel.
Well, I mean, certainly, why not? We certainly like to see countries that support the United States and our values. Why wouldn't we? We wouldn't want to support countries that don't. A lot of times we still give them money, unfortunately. But that's just a part of life, Mark. Our friends are our friends, our enemies are our enemies, right? Like the PLO, for example, they're our enemies.
I'm just saying,
right?
but if there are countries that already were existing, and then we went in there and supported them because of their Christian values, and some people would say that's what happened when we, after the war, went in there and created the country of Israel, helped Israel get created and all that.
Well, I gotta remind you
about Liberia, because Liberia
Israel
is predominantly a Christian nation.
Israel is a Jewish state, and it wasn't just the United States; it was all the allies, and definitely. it's because of the millions and millions of Jews that that Hitler murdered. 600-700 million Jews that were murdered. That is their holy land, and so they were given that land. It's their land. So,
Dan,
what's your beef?
Yeah, Dan. Also, since we're talking about Israel, while it may be a Jewish state, a large percentage of the people there are not Jewish, and other religions are free to worship how they want.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, we can't cross there.
Various religions. I've actually talked to some people that worship from different religions there in Israel, and it is definitely a divided nation. That's part of the things that go on there, because there are definitely various things, everything from mosques to definitely, I think there might even be some Hindu temples to definitely, of course, the Jewish synagogues to even some Baptist churches and other Christian denominations as well.
So what's your point?
I'm just asking, I'm just using them as an example, like the same thing. There are some folks that would argue, and I'm not saying this is right. Sasha may have some interesting views about this and everything. By the way, I was going to mention this, but it does look like one of the bombings that took place was actually in your home area, because I did notice that Odessa was the latest target. And if I remember correctly, that is Sasha's home area and all in that space. So I definitely want to send sympathy out in that regards. But
the last topic of the day, we were going to talk about the UN conference on water. I don't know much about it, but apparently they reported 26%.
Yeah, I mentioned some of that, and that was one of the other things I was asking was how much is that going to be a concern? Because water is definitely something that is a necessity in life, and all in that space, we are all living beings that have a lot of water running through our veins and all in that space, and you have to have a certain amount of water to drink just to survive, and all in that kind of space. So I don't know how the other panelists feel, but I would be highly concerned if that much water is unsanitary, and this is a major issue, because that could definitely lead to all kinds of diseases. We thought the pandemic was bad. I mean, what if there's a massive break of those kind of ailments that are created because of lack of water and because of unsanitary water and all in that space? So if it is as bad as they say and it gets worse, this could be even worse of a health crisis if it is as bad as they are painting it, because they're saying that it's global fresh water won't keep up with the demand by 2030. We're only talking about 7 years from now.
Well, have enough people killed off by then that it should be evened out.
Well, I think that the key is it's such a, I mean, we even having this problem in some places of the U.S., but not as bad, obviously. I mean, but clean drinking water is important not only for just being able to live, but also let's not forget the economy. I mean, without good, safe, clean drinking water, you can't have restaurants, you can't have businesses, you can't grow. I mean, one of the biggest things we're seeing in the growth of pharmaceutical and life science companies in North Carolina is they consume a lot of water and they consume a lot of energy. I mean, Morrisville's went from 100 megawatt load to 125 megawatt load in 18 months, largely because of a $1.3 billion life science campus they're building. And pharma and life sciences, now they want to propose that we already voted for it. They had to expand a substation in my neighborhood, and all the neighbors were livid, but it was the only place that Duke Energy had to do it. So I think that these are issues that we need to be concerned about. Do we have the infrastructure to support growth? And I think that's for India, even though it's the fifth largest economy in the world, that would be my major concern is the drinking water, because I know it's more of a problem in India than it is in many Western countries.
I mean, we had two examples of it being a problem in the United States. I mean, let's look at Flint. Let's look at Mississippi. Let's look at even out there because of the fires and other things out there in California. Those are 3 states that I can think of right off the top of my head and everything. And I'm sure there are others. So it's not just a global problem, but it's definitely a problem that is global and United States issue as well. So definitely we've already had examples of how water has been an issue, and I didn't know about what you're saying about Morrisville, but we definitely remember what was going on in Flint, and we definitely have heard more recently about what's going on in Mississippi.
Yeah, I mean, it's a problem, but not to the extent it would be like in a developing country, very extreme poverty, right? But yeah, it's a concern. Flint.
Water can be filtered, right?
Our water can be filtered, but Dan, in North Carolina, we get a lot of our water from the Jordan Lake, and there's been a lot of concerns about development actually polluting the waters. And Attorney General Stein, when he was a state senator, really fought this. And then Stein also fought the coal ash spilling here in one of the rivers here in North Carolina. So this is a concern. I mean, the environment, there is a connection between clean environment, development, responsible development, and
yeah, exactly. No question about that.
But I don't think it's I don't think it's as much
issues.
Yeah,
it's a problem in the U.S., but not as much as, like, for example, and Sasha, I don't know what is the issue of water and energy infrastructure in Canada. Canada's known to have very clean, robust water systems, right?
Yeah, we don't have any issues. The drinking water is of the highest quality, and you can just drink it same as mineral water, or so on, without.
You don't have a lot of people either.
I'm not sure about.
What's the population of Canada?
Sorry, what's the population?
Yeah.
It's about 36, 37 million.
God, that's a lot of land. You guys have a lot of space.
Most of the land is unpopulated, so basically,
right.
all population of Canada is on the 49th parallel. It's, if you take the most populous cities, let's see, you'll start with St. John, New Brunswick, then you go to Quebec, Montreal, Toronto, Windsor, and then you have out in the west, Edmonton, Calgary, and then finally British Columbia, Vancouver. That's it. It's done.
Yeah. Hey, there were a couple of
Mark, is this a federal issue in terms of infrastructure, the water, or is it a state issue?
I mean, historically, it's been a federal issue. I mean, that was one of the other things that came out of the New Deal with some of the stuff that we did around dams and other things. That was a federal ways that we were dealing with that. I mean, that wasn't the Hoover Dam created under the New Deal and some of the other things that were done. Now, some of those things were not maintained, because I think that's what happened in New Orleans, and that's why those levees broke. And there's no guarantee that they've actually done enough repairs and enough work to prepare for the next hurricane that might come along those lines and everything. It is there.
We can't stop hurricanes. We can't control those.
Well, yeah, and they built it under sea level, which was kind of stupid too.
As I said, it was not built on the best place. And to answer your question, I mean, there are scientists that are working on ways to stop major threats like hurricanes and tornadoes, but that's Mother Nature. And I don't know that we've gotten to the point of being able to stop what God is putting out there and everything in that line. I don't know that we want to. I mean, I've had that conversation with some friends of mine that are looking at this whole conversation around immortality, because there are some futures out there that are saying that if we wanted to have certain things placed in our body, that we can live to be 300, 400, 500, because the little microbes or whatever they insert in you will go in there and fix whatever ailment you've got going on in that space.
To live that long?
Huh?
Who in the heck wants to live that long?
that's a whole other question, because you know there's a lot of folks that are definitely hoping that what is the next level is a much better level and all in that space. But you got some folks that might want to live to be 400, 500, 600 years old. I mean, then we have some folks, including some folks that maybe had too much money on their hand, that decided to do a deep freeze. And I don't know that they've woken up from that deep freeze, and if they've woken up or if they ever wake up. That's the whole subject of many a movie. Will they even know what they have woken up to and everything? I guess if you're living to 600 because you are living naturally through it and you're not doing a deep freeze, at least you're watching the changes happen, how much you're remembering and how much you're gathering, because our brains and our mind does change over the course of time and everything. So how much of that are you going to remember? But I know in a deep freeze, you're not going to remember any of it because you're waking up 100 years later. There have been whole movies about that.
Philosopher's Stone, guys. The Philosopher's Stone.
Exactly. There were a couple of other world issues I was going to get to, and I know Steve's going to do his usual closeout and everything, but just to mention a couple of things, including one around Israel. Apparently, the U.S. was rebuking the prime minister, and then the prime minister has backed off and said there are no new plans for new settlements in the part of Israel that they're at. I think it's the northern western area and all in that segment. But definitely,
Mark, when they say no new settlements, I mean those with no new settlements by Israelis. How about by Palestinians? Is that included also?
I think that the way that it was saying was the whole conversation between Israel and Palestine was supposed to be disrupting the conflict on both sides.
No, I understand that argument. I'm saying when they say no new settlements, is it a one-sided thing, or the other side can build settlements, or is it both sides no settlements?
My understanding is it is both sides, but I'll have to do further reading on that to give you a concrete answer. I'm not going to answer something that I don't know the answer to.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I can do some research and find it out. By the way, Uganda is passing a law making it a crime. Apparently, this is something that some people may want to do even here in the United States. But if you are in Uganda, which is an African nation, and you want to identify as a member of the LGBTQIA community and everything, that will be a crime. So definitely, if you want to have those relationships, you can have them, but they're going to prosecute you if they choose to, because they are saying that they're passing a law that will make it a crime to identify those lifestyles. And I don't know how folks feel about that.
Good for them.
I wonder what they feel about transgender, Mark. I wonder how they feel about transgender people, changing their biological sex.
I'm pretty sure that those folks will get prosecuted as well and everything.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll get prosecuted as well, and there will be other countries that will have those kind of repressive kind of thoughts and everything. By the way, I don't know what's going on in Colombia, because I want to say that it was meaning the country of Colombia, because I want to say they busted a drug cartel earlier, and it looks like they've gotten another one, and this time they actually identified the drugs as Rocky. So just recently, the narco sub was intercepted in the Pacific Ocean off of Colombia with hundreds of packages of cocaine labeled Rocky. So I guess they were saying that they were actually sending the latest Rocky movie over there, but it was actually cocaine that they were sending over there, and they busted another one of those. So it looks like Colombia is being another target, as it oftentimes is, as is many of the South American countries of the drug trade. And some people are saying that it's coming from there, but I also wonder that as well, because a lot of those poor countries don't have helicopters and they don't have planes. So I'm trying to figure out how they're getting the items, unless there are dark forces and data like this and government forces that are intentionally manipulating some of the drug trade. But that's just some of my thoughts, and I don't know that anybody here on the panel agrees with me. But
no, obviously they have customers, and the customers in the United States. Well, how can we do a better job of educating people to steer them away from this type of lifestyle, which is ruining them financially and physically, and obviously killing people too with fentanyl?
No, fentanyl is definitely an issue. Definitely a number of other drug issues. I guess the question I'm asking, I've been asking it for a while, is how much in the United States interest is it to actually win any of the wars that we've declared, whether it's the war on drugs, whether it's the war on crime, whether it's the war on a number of the other wars that governments have declared and everything.
It's very much in it. We're just going about, in a ridiculous way, that we're losing them all, and just a waste of money and effort.
That's what I'm saying. But how much?
Just say no, it didn't work.
And was it a war that was intended to be won? That's my question. I don't know.
I don't think so.
No.
My point exactly.
Because we know Bill Clinton was involved in.
I'm going to go ahead and begin my closeout.
Running
I'm
drugs.
going to head out to work. But
please do.
It's been a wonderful show. We'll be back tomorrow and the end of the week. And as I close out my monologue, I'll say that just last week I hosted the Biden administration, Alan Thomas, the Southeastern Director, at the Research Triangle Park headquarters, where traditionally it's been sort of the central place of North Carolina in terms of research and innovation in universities. I actually hosted the event at the Hub Experiences Center, which is an amazing effort by our president, Scott Levitan of the RTP, to actually have 1.2 million square feet of office space and retail and residential, another 16,000 acres for greenways and open space. But what amazed me, many people from other nations were there, small businesses, along with Congresswoman Ross and Congresswoman Fouché. But for those of you listening around the world, Research Triangle Park was started in 1959 when Governor Luther Hodges asked a banker and a board member of the RTP, Archie Davis, to go raise money for a research park. The goal at the end of the day was to create a research park that would actually be able to hire local talent from 3 universities, land-grant universities, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, NC State, and of course, Duke University, which is a private university. The rest is history. The Triangle flourished. First came IBM, then came GSK. And today, what's amazing is people from all around the world are coming to the Research Triangle right here in North Carolina to innovate, to create research, to develop vaccines, to do all kinds of innovation. I think it's a great story of public-private partnerships and collaboration. And if you're listening to this show from around the country, the world, please go to the Research Triangle Park Foundation website, rtp.org. We can learn about this remarkable journey of North Carolina. Today, we're competing against Boston and Silicon Valley. We're definitely not there yet, but we're well on our way. And the efforts being made today are incredible, how far we've come. So hopefully next time we visit you here locally, if you all come in, Mark Lee and I can take you out to the Triangle, which is actually in Durham. Congresswoman Fouché reminded me on her way out that, Steve, I represent this district, not Wake County. But as the Congresswoman Fouché, I told her that it's a region that all of us can be proud of, and she agreed with me. We'll have more on that next week as we bring in Scott Levitan and his team to talk about the history of Research Triangle and its bright future. From our family to yours, we thank you for being on our show. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow on Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. Thank you.
No problem.